This is DMG. Welcome to 70 System, the storytelling series on this channel. Now, before we get started, I'd just like to say that available from 70system.com, you can download the story structure guide. So this is a one page that everything we've talked about in story structure, you can use this to actually lay out your story, the details of each narrative thread point. You can use this. It's free. 70system.com. Just click on downloads and you'll see it listed there. Also, for this video, we're going to talk about scenes and transitions. So this is a scene and transition guide, also available on the website, and we'll get into it. So if you'd like to support these videos, please check out patreon.com/70system. Scenes and transitions. So if you've played in a role-playing game before, there's a certain rhythm that starts to happen, and you would have noticed that you will do a combat, and then there'll be a wander around, and then a combat, and then a rest, and then a wander around, and then a combat, and then there's, you talk to some guy, and then there's a, etc., etc., etc. So essentially what's starting to happen here is most of these games are, it's this A, B, A, B, A, B. And so one is a scene and one is a transition. So a scene is essentially anywhere where you're going to be having social interactions with other characters, non-player characters, that sort of thing. You're going to be having combat, or you're going to be interacting with something very specifically. So you're trying to disable a trap or something in a corridor. That's a scene. Then a transition is basically whenever you're exploring, traveling between towns, or moving around in the dungeon, or taking a rest, anything like that. This is a transition that happens. And there's a structure to these two that link together and also are slightly different in the way that they work. So in the next few videos after this one, we're going to talk about the structures of the scenes, which is setting the scene, struggle, and mishap. Then we're going to talk about transitions, which is reaction, bad options, and resolve. So you don't have to use these. This is just a way of structuring the game that helps you move the story along more effectively. And especially if you're going to do something like a one-shot or only a 3-game campaign or something to that effect, this will help you sort of set out in your mind how everything is going to work. So you can lay out a dungeon in scenes rather than actual map. So, that they discover the next room, or that you don't actually have a map. You can do it theater of the mind. So you can use the structure of that, or you can actually do it on a map itself, between towns or in a city or whatever you like. It all works the same way. So essentially, when you're using scenes and transitions, you always have a scene, and then you have a transition, and then you have another scene. So a scene is always followed by a transition, which is then always followed by a scene. And so this helps the momentum to keep going, because you're going 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and you're stepping forward. Otherwise, you get into a situation when you have too many scenes and you haven't had an ability for anybody to rest. There hasn't been an ability for the players to collect their thoughts about what's happening. And this is where transitions become quite important, because you need the characters to actually reflect on what has just happened, and so they can make decisions as to how they're going to proceed. So this is very, very vital to the game, which sometimes does get left out. Not all the time, sometimes it just happens naturally, but this is a very important way of doing it. Now, this is slightly different to the way you would structure something in film or literature, because of the mechanics of the actual game, where the players are making choices and the narrative is starting to move back and forth in a relatively unplanned way. So you can kind of know where things are going to be happening, but you don't know what the players are going to do, which is different to a book or different to a movie. The difference between a scene and transition: a scene is moment by moment. So you go action by action, this guy attacks, then this guy attacks, then this guy defends, then this guy climbs a wall, etc. It's moment by moment within rounds. When you get to a transition, it can be anywhere from 10 seconds all the way up to 10 years. So one transition is very different in size. So you're not going moment by moment, you're basically going through the motions of something. And that's where the two fundamentally different in structure. There are 3 basic formats that happen in each of those, but it's important to realize that scenes are moment by moment, so that's when you combat, social interaction, disarming traps, etc. And transitions, when you're resting or traveling or exploring the dungeon, that happens in a different mode to scenes. So if you like this video, click the like button. You can also check me out on Facebook and Twitter /7dsystem. And of course, subscribe to this channel. If you'd like to be notified when new videos are coming out, click the bell next to the subscribe button and you will be notified as videos come out. Thank you for joining me, and in the next one, we'll start to talk about setting the scene.